warns that because of the extent of the disaster, it could take some time to verify the welfare or whereabouts of the Australians. And if you must call that number, I hope the news is good. We take you back to ABC America's coverage now, live from the United States.
Carefully at what might be behind all this, whether there would be a government back there on some of these incidents, pulling the strings, doing the planning, such as Iraq. I think it's time for the Bush administration to correct some of those mistakes of the last 6 or 7 years of the Clinton administration and start focusing on the possibility of state involvement in some of these operations.
I think you're suggesting that maybe the inevitable preoccupation today with can you finger at least the perpetrators themselves and connect them up a notch or two may be inevitable. It's one of the first things we want to know. But it's going to be hugely difficult, I would assume, to begin to put this all together on a global basis.
Very difficult, but whenever I hear people talk about bringing the terrorists to justice, I wince a little bit, because some may be able to be brought to justice, but if Saddam Hussein was behind all this, you're not going to bring him to justice. That's the head of state. I wince a little bit when I hear about countries that harbor terrorists, because Afghanistan is harboring bin Laden, and he may, and his organization may very well have been involved in this. But if Iraq was behind the whole thing, bin Laden isn't located in Iraq. He may be a junior partner to Saddam, but he's not being harbored there. So I think we need to make sure we have a broad enough focus as we look at all the possibilities of what might have gone into this very sophisticated plan and operation was conducted.
Let me take a couple of things you've said and go a little further. I think, one of those who said that Senator Santorum today, the Republican senator in the Senate today, had said this was the time to wage war, not a time to bring people to justice. And I made the observation, I think others did too, that this was maybe contrary to the American idea of itself to ignore the notion of bringing people to justice.
Oh, well, we should bring to justice those whom we can bring to justice. But it may well be that only the small fry can be brought to justice. It may be that the people who were really behind this, whether it was just bin Laden or another terrorist group, or whether it was a head of state, will have to be dealt with the way one deals with a country that has attacked you. The only way we were able to bring the leaders of Imperial Japan and Nazi Germany to justice was by occupying both countries. And that meant war. Today, war has been waged against the United States, but unlike 1941, we're not entirely sure just exactly who was behind the launching of that strike.
But you have mentioned in this conversation alone 3 times, and I think you mentioned it yesterday, Iraq. Why do you keep bringing up Iraq?
Because I think there has started to be some rethinking of the World Trade Center operation of 1993, mainly under the influence of a fascinating new book by Laurie Milroy called Saddam's Study of Revenge. It suggests that the Iraqi government may have been involved in the World Trade Center bombing of 93. If that's true, Ramzi Yousef, now in prison in Colorado, was involved with the Iraqi government, perhaps as an agent, and that means they were also involved with the plan he had to destroy 12 American airliners in the Pacific, the plan that went awry when he was caught and arrested. I think a re-look at those older cases, a fresh look, a look that was not taken in the last 6 or 7 years of the Clinton administration, is very much in line now, and if it bears out the way Laurie and Jim Fox, the FBI agent I mentioned before, suggested, it may turn out that Saddam made a second and this time successful try at what he failed to bring off in 1993.
Okie dokie. I want you to explain it, because every time you say something on television these days, people are either sometimes inclined to believe it immediately. Tell me generically speaking, or tell us generically speaking, what's the CIA doing at the moment? Right? What's it doing today? It's like, 10 to 11 in the West, 10 to 2 in the East here. What are they doing?
Well, I imagine they're doing 2 things. First of all, they're going back agonizingly over every shred of information, report from an asset, intercept if they have any, etc., that they've had in the recent past that might have triggered more attention to this, to see if they'd made any mistakes, if it had been a failure to obtain intelligence or a failure of interpretation. I'm sure they are looking forward. They are trying their best to figure out how to penetrate bin Laden's group more, other terrorist groups, hopefully the Iraqi and the Iranian government.
Haven't they been doing that already? I mean, hasn't the CIA been expending enormous amounts of energy and money on doing this for the last several years?
It's but Peter, it's a war that doesn't stop. It's like being the goalie on a deadly a hockey team in a deadly game in which you can't let a single goal shot through. You have to stop absolutely every shot in order to win or even tie. And so you're continually trying to make sure that every single thing that might happen and develop into something like this is something you can stop. It's never ending.
Mr. Woolsey, thanks for joining us now. We'd like to talk to you again clearly before the day is over. I like it when you check in. Thank you very much.
Good to be with you.
James Woolsey, former director of the CIA. I want to check in now with Claire Shipman, who is outside the White House on the president and national security. Yes.
Peter, we've been talking to some of the security detail that works with the president, and we've learned a number of things. One, the president's going to participate in a meeting at 2 o'clock today, so in just a few minutes, that's going to try to address a number of important issues they think are on the agenda here, whether the IMF and World Bank meetings should go ahead, which, as you know, was scheduled for the end of this month, whether the UN General Assembly meeting should go ahead in New York, which would be quite a taxing meeting, to say the least, after what has happened up there, and the general beefing up of security around the country, especially at airports. Most specifically, we're told the president is concerned about getting the skies open again. He was pushing hard to have that noon deadline met. We're told that slipped to 3, that Boston is one of the problems. They say they are just not ready, and apparently they just don't want to open one airport or 2 airports unless they're going to open them all. Peter.
Thanks very much, Claire Shipman in Washington. We now have on the phone from Venice, Florida. I'm just going to tell you what it says on the card I got handed. Rudy Deckers, who was a flight trainer and allegedly trained 2 of the suspected hijackers to fly. Mr. Deckers, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you loud and clear.
Is that an accurate description of who you are?
No, it's not. I'm the president owner of Hoffman Aviation, and I do have people on my payroll who train.
Okie dokie, you're the owner of Hoffman Aviation. And what is the alleged or possible connection between Hoffman Aviation and any of these terrorists?
Well, of course, we didn't know they were terrorists. They came up here to do flight training, and my people, the student coordinator, did the right things to get passport copies and all kinds of copies before we start training. And that has been all conducted, and they started the training from July till November. And they flew only small planes, a small single-engine plane and a very small multi-engine plane. They obtained their licenses through my company, Hoffman Aviation, and they left apparently to another outfit to get turbo training in the bigger airplanes.
All right, now let me just go back and review coming. You say they. Do you know who they is, to whom you're referring?
They, I'm referring to 2 people that maybe were involved. I didn't have any confirmation from the government if they were in there. The only thing is that I know that they're investigating if they were involved. But these 2 people we were talking about, the students, they left after the training they did with Hoffman Aviation to another facility to do the jet training.
Okay, I'll come back to the jet training in a second, but I just want to first know who's been in touch with you today to ask questions about these suspects?
I did not have any questions from the government. My people were here 2:30 a.m. in Venice. And the only thing that the FBI wanted to have were the documents about the individuals who are maybe involved in this hijacking of the plane. We gave them all the information, and we gave them all kinds of other information we have for students, because we fly hundreds and hundreds of foreign students from all over the world.
So the FBI, though, did ask you for information on 2 individuals in the middle of the night, and you gave it to them?
That is correct.
Now, you say they only would have got small aircraft and multi-engine training, two-engine training at your place, and then went on elsewhere to train on jets. Where do they go to train on jets? And does that mean training on a 757 or a 767?
I have no confirmation yet where they went. It looks like they went into the Pompano Beach area, southeast Florida, for training. They left here in November after they passed their multi-license, and the multi-license was obtained in a Seneca that is a small, very small 2-engine plane, and is nothing to compare to the big boys. And they need another license before they can fly the big jetliners.
And who are these people about whom you gave information to the FBI?
They talked to my office manager here last night, and I don't know what kind of questions been asked to my managers, other than the paperwork from these students and how did they get here, and that information was all given.
Were they students from overseas?
Yes, sir.
And do you know where? Or do you know what their papers said?
Well, we don't have the papers anymore, and I came in 7 o'clock this morning. I didn't see the paperwork, and I don't know every student, but I have heard Afghanistan and another country.
That one of them was from Afghanistan and one was from another country?
Yes.
Okie dokie. Anything else you can tell us about them as individuals?
They didn't socialize because immediately when we hired yesterday, of course, we were all in shock what was happening with all the accidents up there. Now it's at our doorstep, and now it's closer. So we checked with all of us. Did somebody socialize with one or two with them? Did we know anything? And the only thing that I hear from my employees was that they were by themselves, not socializing with any of my other students. And they said here they were strange birds.
Strange birds.
Normally, when you're from a foreign country, they hook together, they go to the bar together, and they socialize. And these people didn't socialize with other students. I can only recall one of the two I talked to, big, chubby guy. He came over as a nice guy. The other guy I never saw, not that I can recall. And so I have no opinion there. I only talked for a few moments with the bigger guy.
Okay. Can I just be correct? Is Huffman Aviation is Huffman?
That is correct.
Huffman Aviation. And just one other question about larger aircraft training. If you had twin-engine training and certification as you could get from Huffman, and then you went on to wherever they went on, what would it take in terms of talent or skill to be able to fly or steer a 757 or a 767?